The day I walked into that party, expecting to find joy in the celebration of my grandson's 8th birthday, I had no idea that it would mark the beginning of a betrayal so deep, it would tear apart everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust. The wounds of losing my husband were still fresh, but nothing could prepare me for what was to come. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I remember the day clearly. It had been a little over a year since Harold passed. His absence still echoes through every room of this house, this life we built together. I was a woman of 72, but inside, I still felt like I was holding on to the last threads of a life that had slipped away too soon. The days felt long and empty without him, and nothing seemed to fill the void. I would wake up, wander through the house, and try to keep myself busy, but no amount of cleaning or gardening or baking could silence the ache in my chest. But despite the weight of grief that threatened to bury me, I tried. I tried to keep going. I even tried to reach out to Daniel, my only son. He had always been distant, but after Harold's death, I wanted to be there for him. I wanted us to hold on to each other. I didn't want to lose him too. So when Leo's 8th birthday rolled around, I thought it would be the perfect chance to show him that I still mattered. I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to be part of his life. "Are you sure you want to go, Mom?" Daniel's voice echoed in my head as I stood in the kitchen, holding the invitation. His words were like a slap in the face, but I hid the sting behind a forced smile. "Of course I want to go," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "It's Leo's birthday. I haven't seen him in weeks." Daniel was silent for a moment, and then he muttered something under his breath. "I just don't want your sadness to ruin the mood." Sadness. That was what he called it. It was more than that. It was grief, pain, and a loss so profound I could barely breathe some days. But I didn't argue. I simply nodded and tried to ignore the hurt. The party was a few days away, and the closer it came, the more I felt my stomach twist with anticipation. I couldn't wait to see Leo's face light up when he saw me. But when the day arrived, I quickly realized that the excitement I had felt was all in my head. The moment I arrived at Daniel and Jennifer's house, I felt it. The coolness in the air, the way Daniel barely made eye contact as he ushered me inside. Jennifer was polite but distant, her forced smile never quite reaching her eyes. I tried to make small talk, but it felt like I was invisible. When I saw Leo, I couldn't help but smile. He was growing up so fast. My heart swelled with love for him, and I couldn't wait to hold him close. But as I walked toward him to give him a hug, Daniel interrupted me. "Mom, not now," he said sharply. "The photographer's waiting for us." I froze. My son had always been a bit distant, but this was different. He had never treated me like this before. He was dismissing me, ignoring me. The hurt was almost too much to bear. I watched as Daniel and Jennifer posed for pictures with their friends and neighbors, laughing, smiling, and acting like the perfect little family. And there I was, standing alone in the corner of the room, my heart breaking with every passing second. As the party continued, I felt more and more invisible. Every time I tried to engage, Daniel shut me down. I could see how Jennifer's eyes would flicker toward him whenever I spoke, as though she was controlling him, manipulating him. It made my blood boil, but I couldn't figure out how to confront it. When the party finally wound down, I was exhausted, emotionally drained. The next day, Daniel came to visit me. I knew he was going to ask me for money. It was his pattern, and I had always given him what he needed. But something inside me was different now. Something had shifted. I couldn't keep enabling him, especially not when he treated me like this. As I sat there, silently watching him play with Leo, I felt a strange sense of resolve building inside me. I wasn't going to be his ATM anymore. I wasn't going to let him use me and then discard me like I was nothing. He came to me with the familiar look in his eyes, the one that told me he needed something. "Mom," he started, "I need some money to cover rent and some bills." I looked at him, my heart aching. This was the moment. I couldn't go on like this. "No, Daniel," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to give you money anymore. I'm not going to keep enabling you." His face hardened, his jaw clenched. "What are you talking about? You've always given me money." "I know, but not anymore," I said. "I'm not going to keep doing this. You need to figure things out on your own." His eyes widened, and then his anger flared. "You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to punish me, aren't you? You've always wanted to control me, and now you're using your money to do it. You're just like Dad." The words stung, more than I care to admit, but something inside me snapped. "I'm not trying to punish you, Daniel. I'm trying to teach you something. You need to grow up and take responsibility for your own life. I can't keep doing everything for you." He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, my heart racing, but a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in a long time, I had stood up for myself. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. I had no idea what was coming, but I had a feeling it was going to change everything. I didn't know how right I was. I stood there, staring at the door Daniel had slammed behind him, the sound of it still echoing in my ears. For a moment, I felt relief, but it was quickly replaced by an ache in my chest. My son, my only child, had never been this cold, this dismissive, and the words he had thrown at me, comparing me to Harold, accusing me of manipulation, stung more than I cared to admit. He was angry. No, more than that. He was frustrated, and he was hurting. But I couldn't let him keep using me as a crutch, not anymore. I needed some space. I needed to clear my head. I put on my jacket and stepped outside, walking aimlessly through the neighborhood. The cold air bit at my skin, but it felt good to breathe, to be alone with my thoughts. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Harold's death or my son's demands. Instead, I found myself trying to make sense of what had just happened. Daniel's anger, Jennifer's calculated indifference, what was going on in their lives? What was I missing? My feet carried me farther than I intended. I found myself walking through the park where the leaves had already begun to change. I loved the fall, the way the colors of the trees seemed to mirror the shifting seasons of my life. But today, the beauty of it all felt distant. I was too distracted by my thoughts, too consumed by the mess of my family. It was when I reached the corner of Oak and Main that I saw them. Jennifer, my daughter-in-law. She was sitting in a cafe with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, her hand resting on his arm, as if she had forgotten the world around them. For a moment, I simply stood there, hidden behind the thick glass of the cafe window, watching them. I couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in my stomach. What was this? I had always known Jennifer wasn't the warmest person, but this felt different. This felt wrong. I tried to shake off the unease that crept up on me, but my curiosity got the better of me. Without thinking, I turned away and walked up the street, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew what I was doing wasn't exactly right, but something about the way they were acting made me feel like I needed to know more. I was getting too close to something I wasn't ready to confront, but I couldn't stop myself. My legs carried me further, and before I knew it, I had made my way behind the cafe. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to cause a scene. So I kept my distance, hiding in the shadows of the alleyway. Through the small opening between two buildings, I watched as Jennifer and the man stood up, gathered their things, and walked out of the cafe. They seemed completely at ease with each other. No guilt, no hesitation. As they made their way down the street, I couldn't help but follow them, my steps slow, my heart heavy with the weight of what I was about to discover. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but a deep, unsettling feeling told me that whatever it was, it wouldn't be good. They turned the corner and entered a hotel, their laughter still floating in the air as they walked inside. I stayed where I was, my feet rooted to the ground, my mind racing. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was like the world had stopped spinning, leaving me frozen in time. Then, as if to confirm my worst fears, I saw it. Jennifer kissed him. She kissed him right there, on the street, before they went inside the hotel. The reality of it hit me like a ton of bricks. My daughter-in-law was cheating on Daniel, and this man, whoever he was the one she was giving herself to. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was going to collapse right there on the sidewalk. All I could think about was Daniel, my son. How was he going to react to this? How could I tell him? How could I possibly break his heart like this? I knew that I had to tell him. I had to. There was no other choice. This was something he needed to know. But the thought of telling him, of seeing his face when he learned the truth, made me feel sick to my stomach. I tried to push the fear away as I walked back to my car. The drive home was a blur, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. What was I going to say? How was I going to do this? How? I could feel the weight of the secret pressing down on me. I knew it would destroy whatever little was left of my relationship with Daniel, but I couldn't ignore it. Not now. When I finally got home, I sat down in the living room, staring at the empty space Harold had left behind. The quiet was suffocating, and all I could hear was the echo of Jennifer's laughter, the sound of her lips meeting that man's, the sound of my world shattering. I had to tell Daniel, but how could I do it? How could I face him and tell him the truth? I tried to calm my nerves, but the thought of confronting him made my hands shake. I paced the room for what felt like hours before finally deciding that I couldn't wait. I couldn't keep this from him. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. My heart hammered in my chest as the phone rang. "Hello?" Daniel's voice was distant, cold. "Daniel," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you." There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him sigh. "What is it, Mom?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to come. "It's about Jennifer. I saw her today with someone. A man. They were kissing, Daniel. She's cheating on you." There was a long silence, the kind of silence that stretches between two people like a canyon, wide and impossible to bridge. Then Daniel spoke, his voice tight with disbelief. "You're lying." "I wish I was," I whispered, my throat tight with emotion. "But I'm not. I saw them together. I couldn't just stand by and say nothing." I waited for his response, but it didn't come. I could feel the space between us growing, the chasm widening with every passing second. Finally, Daniel's voice broke the silence. "I don't believe you, Mom. I don't believe it. I'm telling you the truth, Daniel. You have to believe me." But I could already hear it in his voice, the doubt, the anger, the disbelief. He didn't want to believe it, and part of me knew he wouldn't. But I couldn't back down now. "I'll prove it," I said, my voice shaking. "I'll show you everything." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't going to be easy, but I had to do it. I had to make him see. I couldn't let Jennifer get away with this. I couldn't let her destroy my family. Not without a fight. I had barely slept the night before. My mind had been racing, replaying the scene at the cafe, the kiss, the man I didn't recognize. It felt like a nightmare, something I couldn't wake up from. But it was real. It was all real. And now I had to face Daniel. I had to tell him what I had seen, what I knew, no matter how much it tore me apart to do it. I had to tell him for his sake, for the sake of our family. The morning felt too still, too heavy. I had rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times in my head, but each time I thought about it, the words became harder to speak. What if he didn't believe me? What if he hated me for telling him the truth? What if it ruined everything? But I couldn't hold it in anymore. I knew the truth had to come out, and it was up to me to be the one to bring it to light. When I arrived at Daniel's house, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. It had been years since I had visited this house, years since I had felt like I was welcome here. There was a time when it had been a home, a place where I was needed, but now it felt cold, like a place where I no longer belonged. I rang the doorbell, my hands trembling, and waited. After a few moments, the door opened, and Daniel stood there, looking at me with that same guarded expression. I couldn't tell if he was angry or just indifferent, but I had to do this. "Mom," he said, his voice flat, "what's this about?" I took a deep breath and stepped inside, knowing I couldn't back out now. "Daniel, I need to talk to you about Jennifer." He frowned, clearly irritated. "What about her? I don't have time for this." "I saw her today," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound calm. "She's cheating on you. I saw her with another man. They went into a hotel together. I watched them. You're lying!" Daniel interrupted me, his voice rising. "This is ridiculous. Why are you doing this, Alice? What do you want from me? Stop trying to make me look like a fool." He shook his head in disbelief, his hands clenched at his sides. "You've always been the drama queen. But this is too far. You're just trying to hurt us." I felt a sting in my chest. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to help him, to open his eyes to what was right in front of him. But the more I spoke, the more he pushed me away. "I'm not lying," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I saw her. Daniel, I'm telling you the truth." Daniel's face reddened and his jaw tightened. He looked as if he was about to say something more, but then the door to the other room creaked open. Jennifer. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock, and then she quickly masked it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She had heard everything. "Oh, Alice," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Are you serious? You're really doing this?" She took a step into the room, her eyes narrowing in contempt. "You're not even ashamed of yourself, are you? How far are you willing to go to destroy our lives? I opened my mouth to speak, but Jennifer wasn't done. She moved closer, her tone sharpening. You're getting old, Alice. You're losing your mind, aren't you? You need help. Maybe it's time you admit that. The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, but I couldn't back down. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the truth. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. Not this time. Not when I knew the damage she was doing to my son. You don't get to talk to me like that, I said, my voice rising. I'm not the crazy one here. You are. You're the one who's destroying everything. You've been lying to Daniel, and you think I won't see it? Jennifer's eyes flashed with fury. She took a step toward me, her body stiff with anger. I don't need to listen to this. You've never been part of our family, Alice. You think I don't know what you're trying to do? You've always wanted to ruin things, and now you're using this to tear us apart. What kind of person does that? I could feel the rage building in me. This wasn't just about her affair anymore. This was about years of manipulation, years of pretending like everything was fine when it wasn't. And Jennifer? She was the mastermind behind it all. I was trembling, but not from fear, from anger, from frustration, from the years of being ignored, belittled, and pushed aside. Without thinking, I reached for the nearest object on the table, a glass. It was a stupid impulse, a split-second decision driven by frustration. I grabbed the cup, and in one swift movement, I hurled it toward the floor with all my might. The sound of shattering glass filled the room, sharp and deafening. The cup broke into 1,000,000 pieces, and one of the shards flew toward Jennifer, slicing into her leg. She screamed, the sound high-pitched and filled with rage. "Look what you did!" she cried, clutching her leg. Blood started to seep through her fingers. "You tried to kill me! You're insane, Alice! You're completely out of control!" Her words hit me like a slap. I hadn't meant to hurt her. I didn't even care about her, not really. But what I did care about was the fact that she was now turning the situation around, making me the villain. She was playing the victim, and I was the one who was losing. Daniel rushed to her side, his face twisted in anger and disbelief. "What the hell is wrong with you, Mom?" he shouted. "You've lost your mind. Get out of my house. Now!" I stood there frozen, my heart breaking all over again. I had tried to help him. I had tried to tell him the truth, and this was how he repaid me. Jennifer's bloodshot eyes looked at me with a twisted satisfaction. She had won. She had turned my own son against me, and there was nothing I could do about it. "I'm done, Alice," Daniel said, his voice cold. "I don't want to see you again." I didn't say a word as I turned and walked out the door. The weight of his words, of the way he had thrown me out like I was nothing, was too much to bear. But I knew deep down that I couldn't give up. I couldn't let them win. I would find a way to make them see the truth, even if it meant losing everything. I had never felt so powerless in my entire life. The days after the confrontation were a blur. I didn't hear from Daniel, didn't see him. Jennifer's words still echoed in my mind, how she had twisted everything, turned me into the villain. And Daniel, my own son, had rejected me, thrown me out of his home as if I were the one causing harm. I spent those next days in a haze of confusion, unsure of what to do next. I couldn't go back to that house. I couldn't face him, not after what he said. But I also couldn't let things end like this. I had to keep fighting. There had to be a way to make them see the truth. But that fight wasn't going to be as simple as I thought. It was a Wednesday morning when it all started. I had gone to the market, trying to distract myself from everything that had happened. As I walked down the aisle, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, half expecting to see a message from Daniel. Maybe he was finally reaching out. Maybe he was finally realizing the truth. Instead, it was a text from Jennifer. "We need to talk about you. You're not well. Daniel and I are worried about you. This can't go on." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What did she mean, "this can't go on"? I had barely finished reading the message when the phone rang. It was Daniel. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice flat, emotionless. "Jennifer and I are really concerned. You're not doing well. You need help." "Help?" I echoed, confused. "What do you mean, Daniel? I'm just trying to tell you the truth about your wife. I'm trying to protect you." "You're not well, Mom," he repeated, his voice strained. "We think it's time for you to get some professional help. Maybe even go to a facility, just for a little while. You're getting more aggressive. You threw a glass at Jennifer. That's not okay." I stood there, frozen in the middle of the grocery store, the words sinking in. A facility? They wanted to send me to a facility? It felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. Daniel, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind. I saw what I saw and I'm trying to protect you. You need to understand. I'm sorry, Mom, he interrupted. But this isn't something we can ignore anymore. We've already talked to a doctor. Jennifer's been doing some research, and we think it's best for you to get some help. We'll arrange for everything. It'll be better for you. The last sentence cut through me like a knife. It'll be better for you. The words felt like a lie. This wasn't about me getting better. This was about them getting rid of me. They were trying to control me, to take away what little independence I had left. Daniel, please, I begged, my voice cracking. Don't do this. You're letting her manipulate you. Don't let her do this to me. But the line went silent. A moment passed, and then I heard him sigh, a heavy sound full of resignation. I'm doing this for you, Mom. I want you to get better. I want to help you. Before I could say anything else, he hung up. I stood there in the aisle, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. A hospital? A psychiatric facility? Was that what I had become in their eyes? Someone who needed to be locked away? I didn't have time to process it all before the doorbell rang at my house later that day. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I answered it, I was shocked to see Daniel standing there with Jennifer by his side. She had that same smug, pitying smile on her face that made my blood boil. I'm sorry, Mom, Daniel said, looking more uncomfortable than I had ever seen him. But we've made arrangements. We think it's best for you to go. It's time for you to get some help. Get some help? I repeated, my voice rising with anger. I'm not going to some damn facility. I don't need help. I need you to see what's going on. What she's doing to you. Jennifer stepped forward, her voice sweet but dripping with malice. Daniel and I are just trying to do what's best for you, Alice. You're not the person you used to be. You're becoming more unstable, more erratic. We can't just sit back and watch you hurt yourself. I wanted to scream at her, to expose the truth right there, but I knew it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't listen. They were already so deep in her lies, they wouldn't believe me. They're waiting for you at the facility, Daniel said, his eyes avoiding mine. We'll take care of everything. I could feel my world crumbling. I had never imagined that my own son would do this to me, that he would allow Jennifer to manipulate him into believing I was the problem. This was the ultimate betrayal. Before I could even speak, two men in suits, who I hadn't seen before, stepped into the doorway behind Daniel and Jennifer. They didn't say anything. They just stood there, silent and cold. My heart raced. I knew what they were there for. Daniel, please, I whispered, my voice shaking. Don't do this. You can't let them take me. I'm not crazy. But Daniel just stepped aside, his face unreadable. I'm doing what's best for you, Mom. I'm sorry. One of the men moved toward me. Mrs. Alice, please. We need to get you to the car. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream, to fight back against this madness. But I was too weak, too broken. They were taking me, and there was nothing I could do about it. As I was led to the car, Jennifer's voice echoed behind me. It'll be better for you. Alice, you'll see. The ride to the facility felt like a slow, suffocating nightmare. I was trapped. I had no control, no voice. The tears I had held back for days finally spilled over as I sat in the back seat, staring out the window at the world I was being taken away from. I had never felt so alone in my life. They were treating me like I was incapable, like I didn't have a say in my own life. But they were wrong. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't weak, and I wasn't going to give up. I would find a way out. I had to. The walls of the facility were stark, cold, and impersonal. The sterile smell of disinfectant hung in the air, mixing with the quiet hum of machines in the background. It was nothing like the life I had known before. This was not my home. This was a place where people went when they had nowhere else to go, when they were deemed incapable of taking care of themselves. And that's what they thought of me now. I sat in the small, uncomfortable chair in my room, my hands resting on my lap, feeling the weight of it all. How had I gotten here? Just a few weeks ago, I was in my own home, living my life, trying to help my son see the truth. Now, I was being treated like an invalid, a burden. And the worst part? No one was listening. Daniel, my own flesh and blood, had done this to me. He had let Jennifer manipulate him, let her convince him that I was losing my mind. I had spent years protecting him, loving him, only for him to throw me aside like I was nothing. And Jennifer? She was the puppet master, pulling the strings behind it all. It was humiliating, the way they treated me, the way they spoke to me, as if I were fragile, as if I couldn't understand what was happening. I had never felt so small in my entire life. The first visit they made to see me was an ordeal I would never forget. Daniel showed up, looking uncomfortable and guilty, like he didn't really know how to deal with the situation. I could tell he was struggling with the decision he had made. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, something that resembled regret, but it was fleeting. He didn't know what to say at first. He stood by the door, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his gaze avoiding mine. I watched him, the same child I had raised, the same son who used to come to me for comfort, for guidance. Now, he was a stranger. "Mom," he said finally, his voice soft. I don't know what to say. This whole situation it's messed up." I didn't respond. What was there to say? He had already made his decision. He had already chosen Jennifer over me. He looked down at the floor, shifting uncomfortably. "I feel bad, you know. It's just hard seeing you like this." I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done. The betrayal had been too deep. Jennifer, standing next to him, put on her best concerned expression, though I could see right through it. She was faking it, just like she had faked everything else. "I know, Daniel," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's really hard to see her like this, but she needs help. We're doing this because we care about her, because we want her to get better." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much I saw through her lies, how I knew exactly what she was doing, but I kept my mouth shut. There was no point. They didn't want to hear the truth. They had already made up their minds. When Daniel excused himself to go to the bathroom, leaving me alone with Jennifer, I felt the tension in the air shift. It was as if the moment of false sympathy was over, and the real Jennifer was finally going to show her true face. She leaned in close, her voice low, almost a whisper, though there was nothing kind about her tone. "Now that you're here, Alice," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I'm going to take everything you have. Your house, your car, your finances. It'll all be mine soon. And in time, it'll all be my lover's too. You don't have anything left. Nothing. And there's nothing you can do about it." I felt the weight of her words, the venom in her voice. My body went cold, my stomach twisted in knots. It was as if everything I had worked for, everything I had built, was slipping through my fingers. My son, my home, my life, it was all being taken from me. But what hit me the hardest wasn't just the realization that Jennifer was after my money, after my life. It was the realization that Daniel had no idea. He had no idea what kind of woman she really was. He was so blinded by her manipulation that he couldn't see the truth. And Jennifer was exploiting that, using him to get everything she wanted. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. How had I not seen it sooner? How had I been so blind to her scheming ways? Jennifer's smile widened as she saw the look on my face. She knew she had won. She knew I was powerless to stop her. "You'll never get out of here, Alice," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "We have you exactly where we want you. You're weak. You're nothing now." I refused to let her see how much her words hurt. I refused to give her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply she had cut me. Instead, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You won't get away with this. I will fight you. I will fight you until I have nothing left." She chuckled, a low, mocking sound that made my blood boil. "You're welcome to try," she said, turning on her heel and walking away. As I sat there, the weight of her words pressing down on me, I knew that I couldn't give up. I couldn't let Jennifer win. I couldn't let her destroy everything Harold and I had worked for. I had to find a way out. I had to find a way to expose her, to show Daniel the truth. But more than that, I had to find a way to regain control of my life. Because if I didn't, everything I had ever known, everything I had ever loved, would slip away from me forever. And I wasn't ready to let that happen. Not yet. I couldn't just sit here in this place, waiting for Jennifer to take everything I had worked for. I couldn't let her win. I had to do something. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized what I needed was something concrete, something real, evidence. I had to have something to prove to Daniel that Jennifer was not the sweet, innocent woman she pretended to be. I wasn't going to let my son stay in the dark. He needed to know the truth. I knew he wouldn't listen to me directly, not after everything that had happened, but I had to find a way to make him see the monster she really was. The only problem was that I was stuck here, that I was in this God-forsaken facility, trapped. They were controlling my every move, my every breath. I couldn't just walk out and confront them. If I tried, they would call Daniel, and I would lose any chance of gaining his trust again. But I could still do something. I could use the resources around me. I was allowed to use the computer in the common area of the facility. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Late one night, when the other residents were asleep, I made my way into the room. My hands were shaking as I sat down, but I had to do this. I had to act quickly, before Jennifer and Daniel could do any more damage. I opened the browser and searched for a private investigator. I had no idea how to go about it, but I knew I couldn't waste time. I found a few listings, but one caught my eye. A local detective agency with solid reviews. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest, and clicked the number to call. A man answered on the second ring. "Hello? This is Donovan Investigations. How can I help you?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I need help," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's something going on, something I need to expose, but I can't do it myself." I explained everything to him. How Jennifer had manipulated Daniel, how she had taken control of my life, and how I was now trapped in this facility. I told him about the affair, about the way she was scheming to take everything I had, and then I gave him my final piece of the puzzle. I told him about Leo, my grandson, and how I suspected that Jennifer's lover might be his father, not Daniel. Donovan was quiet for a moment, listening to every word, and then he spoke, his tone measured but serious. "We can get you the evidence you need, but you're going to need more than just the affair. You need proof that she's manipulating everything for your money. That's the key to legally fighting her." I thought for a moment, the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place. I couldn't just expose the affair and expect Daniel to believe me. I needed proof of the bigger scheme, the financial manipulation, the control over Daniel, the lies she'd been feeding him. "I have an idea," I said suddenly. "I need you to get me something. A recorder. I'm stuck in the facility, but I have an opportunity to catch her. I just need a way to record her saying what she's been doing, what she plans to do." Donovan agreed to the plan. He would send me a recorder, and I would find a way to get Jennifer to slip up. But the hardest part was yet to come. I knew that if I tried to escape, they would immediately call Daniel. And if he came, Jennifer would be right behind him. I needed them to come to me, to confront me, but I needed to have the upper hand. The only way to get what I needed was to force Jennifer into a situation where she would reveal herself, where she would expose her manipulations. The plan started to take shape. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the hallway as I paced back and forth, my mind swirling with the details of my plan. Everything had to go perfectly. One wrong move, and I could lose everything. But I had no choice anymore. Jennifer thought she had won, but I was going to turn the tables on her. I was going to expose her once and for all. The plan was simple. I had to make a scene. I had to make them think I was desperate enough to try to escape this hellhole. If I could get their attention, make them think I was losing control, it would force them to act, and that would get Daniel here. Jennifer, too. They would come, and that was when I would have my chance to record her, her true self, her lies, her manipulations. So I made my move. I slammed the door to my room, throwing some of my belongings onto the floor as loudly as I could. Then I yelled, I screamed, calling for help, calling out to anyone who would listen. I shouted about how I was being locked up, about how I couldn't take it anymore, how I needed to leave. It was all an act, of course, but it had to be convincing. I could hear the footsteps of the staff rushing down the hallway, their voices rising in alarm. But I didn't stop. I needed them to panic. I needed them to call Daniel. I needed them to bring him here, with Jennifer by his side. And just as I had hoped, within minutes, the phone rang at the front desk. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was happening. They were calling him. Daniel would be on his way. Jennifer would be with him. The trap had been set. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of the door opening. Daniel walked in, his face a mix of confusion and frustration, as if he had been pulled away from something important. Jennifer stood beside him, her face perfectly composed, the fake concern still plastered on her features. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with irritation. "What is this? Why are you acting like this?" I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he shifted his weight as he looked at me. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to deal with me, and I could feel it in the air between us. But this was the moment. This was the time to manipulate the situation, to make him think that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as crazy as Jennifer wanted him to believe. I took a deep breath, forcing my face into a mask of regret. My voice came out soft, almost pleading. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I know you're doing this because you care, but I can't keep living like this. I need to get out of here. Please, can you talk to the doctor? Maybe I can have fewer restrictions. Please help me." For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. I could see it, the confusion, the remorse. He hated seeing me like this. He hated that I was in this place, but he was so blinded by Jennifer that he couldn't see that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't me. It was her. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. Daniel didn't respond right away. Instead, he glanced at Jennifer, his eyes searching hers, as if looking for permission to do something. That look alone told me everything I needed to know. Jennifer had him under her thumb. She was the one pulling the strings, and I was nothing but a pawn in their twisted game. After what felt like an eternity, Daniel sighed. "I'll go talk to the doctor," he muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. "I'll see what I can do." With that, he left the room, leaving me alone with Jennifer. Now, this was it. This was my chance. I waited for a few moments, listening carefully for the sound of Daniel's footsteps fading down the hallway. Once I was sure he was gone, I turned to Jennifer. She stood there, arms crossed, a smug smile curling on her lips, as if she had already won. I knew what I had to do. I let out a soft, almost tired sigh, keeping my voice casual as I spoke. "So, you've been busy, huh? I'm sure you've already spent all my money, haven't you? I know you've been planning this for a while. You probably sold the house and the car already. That's what you do, isn't it? Take everything that's mine and make it yours." Jennifer's smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered, her expression dripping with fake sympathy. "Alice, you don't understand. We're doing this for you. You need help. You need to get better. You can't keep living like this. You've lost everything." But I wasn't listening to her words anymore. I knew exactly what I was doing. I had baited her, and now I had her where I wanted her. Jennifer laughed, a high-pitched, condescending laugh that made my blood boil. She stepped closer to me, as if she were about to offer some comforting words, but all I heard were the lies she had been feeding me for months. "You have no idea how much easier things are now, that we don't have to worry about you," she said, her tone dripping with malice. "The house is gone, the car is gone, everything you had, it's all mine now. We're living just fine, Alice, living off of your money. You've served your purpose. You're a burden now, a useless old woman." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I had always known Jennifer was ruthless, but hearing her say it so coldly, so plainly, it made me sick. But I didn't let her see how much it hurt. I couldn't afford to show weakness. What she didn't know, what she had no idea about, was that every word she said was being recorded. Every confession, every lie, was being captured on that tiny device I had hidden in my pocket. She smiled down at me, her voice mocking as she added, "You'll never get anything back, Alice. There's nothing you can do about it now. You're trapped." I took a deep breath, keeping my expression neutral. "We'll see about that," I whispered under my breath, knowing that in the end, Jennifer would regret every single word she'd just said. I had what I needed, the proof, the damning evidence, and now nothing would stop me. I would make sure Daniel knew the truth. It was only a matter of time. The weight of what I had in my hands felt heavier than I ever imagined. I sat at the community computer, my fingers trembling as I accessed the internet, carefully uploading the files from the recorder Donovan had sent me. Every word Jennifer had said, every confession, every lie, was right there. I could almost feel her smirk, hear her cruel laughter echoing in my mind. But now, it wasn't her words anymore. Now, it was proof, solid, irrefutable proof. I paused before hitting the send button. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I wasn't just a powerless old woman in a cold, sterile facility anymore. I had a chance to take back control, to expose the truth. I had been through so much, but I wasn't going to let Jennifer win. I sent the files to Donovan, my heart pounding as the email was sent off. I was shaking with a mixture of fear and excitement, unsure of what would happen next, but knowing that I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I wasn't just sitting back anymore. I was fighting. Within moments, Donovan's reply came through. It was simple, concise, and professional. "We've got everything we need. I'm filing a case as we speak. We'll go public with this, but I've also contacted an attorney to help with the process of getting you out of that facility. We'll make sure they can't keep you there any longer." I let out a shaky breath. I could hardly believe it was happening. For the first time in months, I felt something that resembled hope. Maybe this nightmare could end. Maybe I could finally take back what was mine. But there was no time to relax. Donovan's next message made my blood run cold. "Listen, Alice, I've spoken with the lawyer. We need to act quickly. If Daniel and Jennifer catch wind of this, they'll destroy the evidence before we have a chance to use it. We need to get you out of there as soon as possible, discreetly. We can't let them know what we're doing." My heart pounded in my chest. I knew what that meant. If they found out, everything would fall apart. Jennifer would make sure of it. She wouldn't hesitate to destroy me completely. This had to stay quiet. No one could know. I could feel the urgency of the situation pressing down on me. I wasn't just fighting for my freedom anymore. I was fighting for my future, my life, my family's legacy. Everything Harold and I had worked for was on the line. I couldn't afford to mess this up. The plan was simple. I had to get out, fast. But there was one catch. I couldn't do it alone. I would need the lawyer and Donovan to work quickly. And most importantly, I needed them to make sure Daniel and Jennifer never saw it coming. They couldn't find out what was happening. If they did, they would fight back, and I would lose everything. The lawyer Donovan had contacted called me the next morning. His voice was calm, professional, but there was a sense of urgency there that I couldn't ignore. "We filed the necessary papers, Alice," he said. "We've already contacted the facility. They're on board with the plan, and we'll be moving you to a safe location in the next few days. You'll be out before anyone realizes what's happening. But we need you to stay quiet. Don't let them know what we're doing." I nodded, though I knew he couldn't see me. "I won't say anything. I just need to get out of here." "Good. We're working on a plan to ensure your assets are protected. We'll make sure Jennifer doesn't get her hands on anything. But we need to be swift. If they find out about the legal action, they'll move fast to cover their tracks." I felt a surge of hope, but also fear. Everything was hanging by a thread. But I had no choice. I had to trust them. I had to believe that they could help me. "I understand," I said. "Just make sure they don't find out. If they do, it's all over." "We're on it," the lawyer reassured me. "We'll keep you updated every step of the way. Just stay calm, and we'll get you out of there." I hung up the phone and sat in silence, trying to steady my breathing. It was happening. I was going to get out of here. But the fear gnawed at me. What if something went wrong? What if Jennifer found out? What if Daniel came to his senses and realized what I was doing? I couldn't afford to make a mistake now. I couldn't afford to trust anyone but the people who were working to help me escape. And so, I waited. The days dragged on, each one feeling longer than the last. I could feel the tension building inside me, but I didn't show it. I couldn't let anyone here see how desperate I was. Not the staff, not the other residents. No one could know that I was about to be set free. I spent every moment I could in my room, using the time to gather my strength and prepare for what was coming. There was no turning back now. This was my chance. This was my fight, and I was going to win. As I lay in my bed that night, my mind racing, I knew that everything was about to change. For better or for worse, I was on the cusp of reclaiming my life. But Jennifer didn't know that yet, and when she found out, it would be too late. The trap had been set, and now it was time to let it spring. The morning dawned quietly, a soft light creeping through the blinds of my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing with anticipation. Today was the day everything would change. Today, I would finally escape the hellhole they had put me in. I had never felt more alive than I did in this moment, but there was still a sense of caution. There was no room for mistakes now, not after everything I had endured. I couldn't afford to falter now, not when the stakes were so high. I heard the faint sound of footsteps outside my door, and then the soft knock I had been waiting for. It was Donovan. He had arranged everything. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low, filled with urgency. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I'm ready." He handed me the small envelope with the court documents inside. everything we needed to make my release official. The lawyer had worked quickly, and thanks to their efforts, I was about to leave without anyone knowing. No one, least of all Jennifer and Daniel, could find out. I stood up, my knees a little weaker than I would have liked, but I pushed the fear aside. I couldn't show any weakness now, not when I was this close to taking back control of my life. Donovan gave me a quick nod, and we moved quickly through the back halls of the facility. The staff was distracted, and the guards had been given strict instructions not to ask questions. Everything had been set up to make my exit as smooth as possible. In minutes, I was out the door, walking into the cool morning air. The world felt different now, like I was seeing it for the first time after years of being trapped in darkness. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I could think. I was free, but I wasn't done yet. I still had one last thing to do. Donovan and I climbed into the car he had arranged for me, and as we drove through the city, I could feel the tension building in my chest. I had a plan, and it was time to put it into motion. I had to go to Daniel's house. I had to show him the truth. I had to expose Jennifer for what she was. I didn't know how Daniel would react. I didn't know if he would believe me. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let Jennifer get away with it. Not after everything she had done to me, to him, to our family. When we arrived at Daniel's house, I didn't hesitate. I walked up to the door with determination, the envelope containing the damning evidence clutched tightly in my hand. I rang the doorbell and waited. A few moments later, the door opened. There stood Daniel, looking surprised, but still as distant as ever. His eyes widened when he saw me, standing there in front of him. "Mom?" he said, his voice filled with confusion. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to show you the truth." "Daniel," I said, my voice steady, "I'm here to show you everything Jennifer's been hiding from you." He stared at me for a long moment, clearly unsure of what to say. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the faintest flicker of doubt. But Jennifer was already there, standing behind him, her smile tight and forced. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I didn't answer her. Instead, I stepped into the doorway, my eyes fixed on Daniel. "Do you really want to know what's been going on behind your back?" I asked him, my voice soft but firm. "Do you want to know what your wife has been doing?" Daniel's face hardened, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. I knew this was difficult for him to process. He had built his life with Jennifer, trusted her with everything, but now, the truth was undeniable. I pulled out the small recorder and pressed play. The sound of Jennifer's voice filled the silence of the hallway. "The house is gone. The car is gone. Everything you had, it's all mine now. We're living just fine, Alice. Living off of your money. You've served your purpose. You're a burden now. A useless, old woman." I saw Daniel's face go pale as he listened to the recording. The shock was evident on his face, his mouth opening and closing as if he couldn't find the words. Jennifer's expression twisted into one of panic, but it was too late. The truth had already been revealed. "That's not what it sounds like," Jennifer said quickly, her voice rising in defense. "You don't understand, Daniel. Alice is just—" But Daniel cut her off, his voice trembling with disbelief. "Shut up, Jennifer. Just shut up." I handed him the envelope with the financial documents inside. He took them, his hands shaking as he opened them. I could see the realization dawning on him as he read the pages. The proof of Jennifer's betrayal, her manipulation, her scheming, all of it was there, black and white. There was no denying it anymore. This is insane," Daniel muttered, his voice filled with horror. He looked up at me, his face a mixture of guilt and disbelief. I had no idea she was doing this to me, to you." Jennifer's face turned red with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about," she spat. "This is all lies. None of this is true." I shook my head slowly, my eyes never leaving her. "You've been lying to him, Jennifer, all this time. You've been manipulating him, taking everything I worked for, everything Harold and I built. And you thought you could get away with it. But you won't." Daniel turned to Jennifer, his voice cold, hard. "I trusted you. I believed in you. But you've been deceiving me. All this time." Jennifer's face twisted into an expression of pure rage. "You don't know what you're talking about," she hissed, taking a step forward. "You think you can just come in here and ruin everything? I'm not ruining anything." "Jennifer," I said, my voice steady, "you did that all on your own." Daniel stood there, staring at her, his mind clearly reeling from everything he had just learned. He looked back at me, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. Is it true? Is Leo? I took a deep breath and nodded, the weight of the truth sinking in. Yes, Leo may not be your son. Jennifer's affair. It's been going on for a while. I'm sorry, Daniel, but it's time you knew the truth. Daniel's face crumpled, the weight of the realization crashing down on him. No, this can't be true. But it was, and now there was no escaping it. Jennifer was exposed, the truth was out, and the life she had built on lies and manipulation was starting to unravel. It was like a storm had passed through Daniel's life, and now there was nothing but the wreckage left behind. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, hung over him like a dark cloud, one he couldn't escape, no matter how hard he tried. The next few days felt like a blur. Jennifer was arrested, charged with financial manipulation, fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence I had provided, her own words, the documents, everything, was enough to put her behind bars. The authorities wasted no time. She was hauled away, handcuffed and humiliated, her face twisted in rage and disbelief. She tried to scream her innocence, but it was too late. The lies had caught up with her, and there was no getting out of it. I watched it all unfold, feeling a strange sense of relief. It wasn't the kind of victory I had imagined. There was no satisfaction in seeing her taken away, no joy in the knowledge that she would finally pay for what she'd done. All I felt was emptiness. For years I had been her victim. For years I had been manipulated, controlled. And now, here I was, standing in the wreckage of everything. Daniel, of course, was devastated. He had trusted her. He had built a life with her, one he thought was real. But now, everything he had believed in was shattered. He was left to pick up the pieces, and it wasn't going to be easy. I tried to avoid him in the days that followed, giving him space to process everything. I wasn't sure what I could say to him. After all, he had betrayed me too. He had sided with Jennifer, turned his back on me when I needed him the most. But there was something in his eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. Guilt. He showed up at my door one afternoon, looking exhausted and broken. He was different, his face pale, his posture slumped as if the weight of his actions had physically drained him. "Mom," he said softly, his voice hoarse. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make up for what I've done." I didn't say anything at first. What was there to say? I had been through too much to just forgive him on the spot. But there was something in the way he said it, something raw and genuine. Maybe he was starting to see the truth. Maybe he was beginning to realize just how deep his own blind spots had been. "Daniel," I finally said, my voice steady but filled with the weight of everything we had been through. "It's not about fixing it. It's about learning from it. You have to face what you've done. You've got to live with it, and so do I." He nodded slowly, looking at the ground. I know I can't take any of it back, but there's something I need to do, something I've been thinking about." I looked at him curiously, waiting for him to continue. "I need to adopt Leo," he said quietly. "I don't care about bloodlines. I don't care if he's not my biological son. He's mine. I'm the one who's been here for him. I'm the one who's raised him." His words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I didn't know how to react. It was such a complicated, tangled situation. Leo had been a part of our family, but now there was the question of paternity. What if he wasn't Daniel's child after all? What if he was the product of Jennifer's affair? Could Daniel still be the father in every sense of the word? I didn't have the answers. I couldn't give them to him. But in that moment, I understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to make things right, trying to fix what he had broken. And, maybe for the first time, he was trying to be a father. Maybe he wasn't the man I thought he was. Maybe he still had a chance to prove himself. "You don't have to do it alone, Daniel," I said, my voice softening. "You're not alone in this. If you really want to adopt Leo, then you'll have to fight for it. But you don't have to do it by yourself." He looked at me with gratitude in his eyes. But there was something else there too, something that I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was relief. But whatever it wasn't the same Daniel who had thrown me out. This was someone who was trying to heal, trying to fix the pieces of his shattered life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Jennifer's arrest and the legal proceedings were only the beginning. There were discussions about Leo's future, legal battles about his custody, and a long road ahead for Daniel. I watched as he slowly began to take responsibility for his actions, for the role he had played in my pain and in the unraveling of everything we had once been. I didn't know if we could ever go back to the way things were before. There was so much that had been broken. But I did know this. I was finally free. Free from Jennifer's control, free from the manipulation, free from the guilt and the anger that had weighed me down for so long. I started to rebuild my life, slowly, carefully. I moved into a small house on the outskirts of town, one that felt like a fresh start. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my space, my home. I didn't have to share it with anyone. I could do things my way, without the constant weight of someone else's expectations. And little by little, I began to feel like myself again. I started spending time with friends I had lost touch with, getting involved in activities I had neglected for years. I even began volunteering at the local shelter, helping others who had been through struggles like mine. As for Leo, I didn't have all the answers, but I knew that, in the end, love wasn't defined by blood. It was about who showed up for you, who stood by you through the hardest times. And right now, that person was Daniel. He and I had a long road ahead of us, but I was ready to walk it, one step at a time. Jennifer might have thought she could take everything from me, but what she didn't realize was that you can't steal what someone has inside them. Strength, resilience, the will to keep going, no matter how much life tries to knock you down. And I was still standing. I always would be. I decided to start my life again, in a new house. It wasn't grand or extravagant, but it was mine. A modest 2-story house on the edge of town, with a small garden and a cozy front porch. I had picked it out myself, every detail considered, every room reflecting what I had longed for. A space that was truly my own, free from the manipulations of the past. I had done it. I had reclaimed what was mine. The past few months had been a blur of change, legal battles, new beginnings, healing old wounds. But now, standing here in front of this house, I realized something profound. I had rebuilt my life. Not just the house, not just my finances, but my sense of self. The woman I was before, the one who had been swallowed up by grief, by betrayal, by neglect. She was gone. She had been replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to fight for it. I walked into the house, taking in the familiar smell of fresh paint and new wood. I could almost hear Harold's voice in my head, telling me how proud he'd be. It wasn't easy, the process of letting go of him. His absence still carved a space in my heart that nothing could fill. But I had learned to carry that pain in a different way now, a way that didn't consume me, a way that allowed me to keep living. I had spent so many years living for others, trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter-in-law. But in the end, I realized that the most important person to live for was myself. I didn't want to waste any more time on the people who had tried to take everything from me. I had let go of the guilt, the resentment, and the anger that had consumed me for so long. But that didn't mean I couldn't help those I loved who were still struggling. Daniel had been working hard to rebuild his life. And Leo, well, Leo was still adjusting, still coming to terms with everything. I couldn't erase what had happened, but I could be there for them. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to help them as they had helped me, to give them the support I had denied myself for far too long. It was an early Saturday morning when Daniel came by, looking tired but a little lighter than he had before. His relationship with Jennifer had crumbled completely, and though the process of healing wasn't easy, I could see the change in him. He was starting to realize the gravity of his choices. The guilt, I could see, was still there, but it was no longer his defining trait. "I've been thinking a lot about Leo," he said, as we sat in the small living room of my new home. "I'm doing everything I can to make sure he's okay, but I don't know if I'm enough. I don't know if I'm enough to be the father he needs." I could see the concern etched into his face, the uncertainty in his eyes. He was trying, that much I could see, and maybe, just maybe, he would become the father Leo needed him to be. "You are enough, Daniel," I said softly, my voice full of a confidence that I had earned the hard way. "You've always been enough, and I know it's hard, but I'm here for both of you. I know you'll make mistakes along the way, but you'll learn from them. You'll be a good father to Leo, but you have to start believing in yourself." He nodded, looking down at his hands. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to make up for everything. I don't know how to fix it. You don't have to fix it." "Daniel," I said, reaching over and taking his hand, "but you can make it right, and that starts with being there for him, being present. I'm not saying it will be easy. It's going to take time, but you'll get there." Daniel didn't speak for a moment, just sat there quietly. Then he looked up at me, a small, tentative smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Thanks, Mom. I don't know where I'd be without you." I smiled back, feeling the warmth of his words settle into my chest. I had always been there for him, but now he was starting to find his way, and that made everything worth it. Later that afternoon, Leo came over to visit. He was still a little distant, still working through his emotions, but when he saw me standing there in the doorway, something in his eyes softened. "Hi, Grandma," he said quietly, his voice a little unsure, but there was a spark of something in him. Hope, maybe. I knelt down to his level, my heart swelling with love for this child who had been caught in the middle of so much chaos. "Hey, Leo. I'm glad you're here." He smiled shyly and stepped into my arms for a hug. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and that was enough for me. We spent the afternoon together, and I could feel the distance between us shrinking. Slowly, we were beginning to rebuild our relationship. The pain of the past would never completely disappear, but I had learned to carry it differently. With time, I had started to see the beauty in the little things again, the way Leo's laugh filled the room, the quiet moments I shared with Daniel, and the peaceful solitude of my new home. As the evening drew to a close, I sat on the porch, watching the stars begin to fill the sky. It was quiet now, peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The loss of Harold would always be with me. It was a grief that ran deep and never truly went away. But I had found a way to live with it, to honor it, and to keep moving forward. I wasn't the same woman I had been. I was stronger now, more independent, and I knew that no matter what the future held, I had the strength to face it. I had learned that it was never too late to start over, to rebuild, to find joy again. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. A new chapter was beginning, and I was ready to live it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.